speakers for this session. This session on strategic partnerships of Energia and Boeing in space. So I would like to invite on stage the General Director of the Rocket and Space Corporation Energia, Mr. Vladimir Sontsev, and Mr. John Elbon, Vice President and General Manager of the Boeing Company. Please. I would also announce to the audience that we will have volunteers collecting questions and we have microphones. So please, when you do have a question, raise your hand and specify for which of the two speakers your question is. Thank you. So I think we are ready to start. Oh,
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Flintson, for organizing this, inviting me to participate with you. It's very good. You know, Energia and Boeing have been partners for a very long time, working on space, human spaceflight in particular. And we're looking forward to continuing that relationship and leveraging it as we move into the next phases of human spaceflight. So I thought I would just briefly show a little of that history and then a little bit of the opportunities in front of us. And we can talk about that then as we get into questions and answers. So I think it's interesting to think about how human spaceflight started as a competition between our countries, Russia and the United States. And then somewhere as we got through that, down the road in that process, the space race became a space cooperation. And the US and Russia agreed that cooperation in space was vital in order to learn from each other's experiences and to prevent duplication of efforts and to make progress going forward. So our companies started, because of the things we were working on, building a relationship, really beginning with the Apollo-Soyuz test project. We had two different technical approaches to how that might work, but we came together and both nations cooperated in space together. So you can see a history across. It went through the shuttle Mir activities where the space shuttle docked with Mir, and then really flourished during the ISS development and integration on orbit, where our countries and our companies had to work very closely together to make that happen. I'm always amazed that the first two pieces of the space station never saw each other on the ground. They were launched from different countries, nearly halfway around the world. They came together on orbit, we plugged them up, and they worked beautifully. It took a lot of cooperation to make that happen. And then finally, we look at the new era of cooperation in space as we move on to the next phase. I have a story I like to tell about this cooperation. I grew up not knowing Russian citizens, thinking of them as a competitor. And I found myself early in my engineering career working with Russian engineers to try to make something happen together. The first time this happened was the Mir docking module that Energia built was brought to the Kennedy Space Center for its checkout before launch. And I remember looking out the windows of the high bay of the space station processing facility with a bunch of engineers, curious about the Russian engineers that were down there and how they might work, and thinking of them as being different. After a couple months, we had a dinner, and we were together and we were communicating through interpreters, and I realized, or I learned in this conversation, that the Russian gentleman I was talking to had a daughter. I had a daughter about the same age, and they both had boyfriends that we couldn't stand. So suddenly we became really tight. You know, we realized that we were all just human beings having the same issues, the same problems, and I think the cooperation in space leads to that. in all the international relationships we have, but in particular the relationships that we've had between Boeing and Energia. Looking forward, there are many things that we're going to focus on working together. I think the first is the future of the International Space Station, which both of our companies are deeply involved in. There's some amount of extension that's going to happen to the station, and then some amount of transition that's going to happen to the station. And it will be important for us to work with each other to help our governments bridge that gap and do that transition. We're involved in joint development and production of docking systems that will allow the Deep Space Gateway and other low Earth orbit facilities to have a common docking adapter. And there's a lot of commonality that we can work together there. And then finally, the Deep Space Gateway, I think, is perhaps the most exciting thing that is in our future. And I'm looking forward in a tremendous way to leveraging the relationships that we've built on the International Space Station, the knowledge that we've gained about how to work together, leveraging that to the benefit of our two countries, of course our companies, but our two countries, and really the world to make the Deep Space Gateway a reality. So that's kind of how this looks to me. We certainly have enjoyed a great relationship in the past, and going forward, I'm very, very optimistic that that will continue. So thank you very much.
Добрый день. Ну, не случайно сегодня на сцене вот Boeing и Energia. Наша история – это история, по сути дела, развития мировой космонавтики.
Good afternoon, everybody, and today we're going to tell our history.
Искусственного спутника Земли, который был произведен в России в Энергии.
Next month is a big anniversary date for the first satellite launch, and this is going to be 16 years anniversary.
И так же, как сегодня мы обсуждаем с Боингом возможность реализации лунной программы, наверное, не все знают, что, в общем-то, у истоков МКС стоял и Боинг, и Энергия, в результате чьих переговоров, собственно.
Actually, today Boeing and Energia had a meeting and we discussed the moon exploration perspective. And maybe not everybody knows that ISS program started from not only NASA and Roscosmos Corporation, but Boeing and Energia also.
В 1993 году состоялось решение Энергии, компании Boeing, Kvarner Норвегия и украинских компаний о реализации программы морского старта.
The sea launch program started between Boeing and Energia.
Ну и помимо проекта «Морской старт», Энергию и Boeing связывает богатая история сотрудничества. Мы сотрудничаем и по вопросам строительства МКС, пилотируемых кораблей, вместе осуществляем, в общем-то, реализацию всех космических программ.
Besides sea launch, Boeing and Energia have cooperation in manned space exploration, launching vehicles, and we are looking forward to space exploration perspective.
Программа МКС является наиболее грандиозным проектом и с точки зрения решения технических вопросов, экономических вопросов, ну и в рамках, в общем-то, реализации всех международных отношений. Сегодня участников это 15 стран, которые входят в программу МКС. Я думаю, что и по лунной программе мы тоже, в общем-то, будем двигаться аналогичным образом.
ISS project is the largest international space project, and NASA, Boeing and Energia started that project among other participants. And there are 15 countries that participate in this large project. And it's the largest one. And I hope that the moon space exploration will combine that many countries, at least, maybe more.
Ежегодно Энергия запускает 4 союза. Программа грузовых кораблей «Прогресс», которая обеспечивает, собственно говоря, сегодня транспортную систему, которая связывает нашу Землю с Международной космической станцией.
Every year, Energia launch 4 manned vehicles to the space station ISS, and we also support the cargo delivery to the space station.
Сотрудничество с компанией Boeing сегодня еще обсуждается возможность совместных решений по стыковкам наших и будущих кораблей. И началось это с истории Союза Аполлон. И сегодня, в общем-то, я думаю, что это получит тоже определенное развитие. И в дальнем космосе мы научимся стыковаться вместе.
And Boeing and Energia, we do a lot of things together, and we are working on the docking systems, and for the moon exploration, I hope we will learn how to do the we will learn how to make it better way, and we will continue to cooperate.
Ну и сегодня представляется достаточно логичная вот дорожная карта по освоению дальнего космоса, то есть это около Международная космическая станция, затем вот станция Deep Space Gate, ну и дальше, в общем-то, мы прогнозируем двигаться в сторону Марса.
And this is the space exploration roadmap you can see in the picture, and we see the space station, and then Deep Space Gateway, and from this gateway we are seeing to travel to Mars and further.
Ну, мы сегодня рассматриваем возможный проект создания окололунной станции, где Россия готова проучаствовать своими элементами. Это шлюзовой модуль, это транспортная система нашего ракет-носителя сверхтяжелого класса, будущий корабль «Федерация».
And for the cislunar station, our perspective in what we can do for this program is the designing an airlock, designing the super heavy launch vehicle, and using the future vehicle Федерация.
Поэтому вклад России в освоение дальнего космоса, я еще раз повторюсь, это предоставление транспортной системы, это исследование с помощью космических автоматических аппаратов, ну и та же интеграция российских модулей в будущую лунную станцию.
So we're going to support the moon program in providing the transportation system, giving the super heavy launch vehicles, and maybe designing new modules for the cislunar station.
Новый пилотируемый корабль «Федерация», мы планируем, что он сможет доставлять 4 космонавтов и для исследования и дальнего космоса, и для исследования лунной поверхности.
The new manned spacecraft Федерация is planned to be used for both moon exploration and going further to the deep space exploration.
Первый полет мы планируем осуществить в 2022 году на низкую околоземную орбиту, и затем в дальнейшем с 2028 года на вновь создаваемой ракете сверхтяжелого класса мы начнем осуществлять полеты к Луне.
So I hope we will have the first launch for Federaция in 2027, and starting from 2028, we will launch the super heavy launch vehicles.
Сегодня в России разрабатывается новый ракетоноситель «Союз-5» среднего класса, который будет способен выводить на низкую опорную орбиту 17 тонн груза. «Союз-5» – ракетоноситель среднего класса, с которой начнется новая линейка ракетоносителей, которые «Союз-5» сможет выводить 17 тонн на низкую орбиту.
So Soyuz-5 is a new family launch vehicle and it will start the new launch vehicle series, and we're planning to start it from 2022, and it will be used for the further super heavy launch vehicles.
И следующим этапом это будет создание ракет-носителя, который я говорил, сверхтяжелого класса, первый полет которого номинируется в 2028 году.
And like I told you before, the super heavy launch vehicle is planned to start for the first launch in 2028.
Я думаю, что наши совместные усилия позволят нам получить определенную синергию, польза от которой будет, по сути дела, и Америке, и России, и, я надеюсь, другим государствам. Спасибо.
I really hope that our cooperation today, our close cooperation and our joint efforts will bring fruits not only for our companies but for our countries as well. Thank you very much.
So I guess now we can take a few questions. I think there's a microphone in the audience. If you raise your hand, and I'm sure they'll bring it over.
If nobody have, maybe I can ask you.
Hello, I'm from academia, so I have a question about academic involvement. And do you see that university can somehow help you to develop all these wonderful joint endeavors, and how you see them, how they can be involved? And do you have any programs, and do you have any desire to involve students, at least in some initial stages of design or research projects? Thank you.
I think it's the acoustics are a little challenging here, so I'll repeat what I think the question was. I think you asked if we were able to involve university students in the development of the projects that we're working on. And I'll take a crack at that first. I would say, first of all, I would say that the demographics of our industry are such that a lot of engineers are going to be retiring over the next 10 years or 15 years. And so it's incredibly important to us that there is a pipeline of students coming out of the universities to work for our company, and I think that's true of the aerospace industry in general, at least in the US. And so we're very interested in cultivating the interest and encouraging people to study engineering and math and science. I can tell you that at Boeing we have about 50 students that come in every summer to spend time with us and work on projects and learn from that. We also have agreements with universities for them to do some studies or work that then can factor into the things that we're doing. But we're on a journey to Mars, and it's going to take at least a couple decades. And so I think Vladimir and I will not be sitting here on this stage when we finally get to Mars. And so it's real important that there's a pipeline of folks coming behind us to pick up that mantle and carry us through that journey. If you have any things you would add.
Ну, если говорить о системе образования в России, то сегодня наша компания сотрудничает со многими университетами российскими.
If we're talking about the Russian education system, then our company, our corporation is cooperating with many Russian universities.
Мы работаем и со школами, и даже с детскими садами.
We cooperate with high schools also and with kindergartens too. Sorry.
Ну, дорога в космос длинная, тяжелая, поэтому надо готовиться с детства. Поэтому мы самым серьезным образом поддерживаем систему образования, и сегодня у нас трудится достаточно много молодых людей, которые в будущем составят, в общем-то, основу российской космонавтики.
We're cooperating with youth, and actually the way to the space exploration is long and challenging. So we really support young people in getting their way, and we have a lot of young specialists, young engineers working for our company, and the future is with them.
Вот у нас недавно вернулся самый молодой космонавт Федор Юрчихин, ему 61 год, ну еще летать и летать.
So recently, the youngest cosmonaut in our system, Fyodor Yurchikhin, he just turned 61 years old. So he has very long future ahead. So he will fly and fly more and more.
Yes. Does it work? No, it doesn't. Hello? Hello, my name is... Can you hear me? My name is Serge Patard from the European Space Policy Institute. I know the acoustics are quite challenging, so I'm going to speak slowly. We understand that the deep space getaway is going to be rather central for cislunar, I would say, operations, and maybe beyond go to Mars. Based on the experience both companies you had on the International Space Station, you probably will be quite involved in this new project, and the question today is how international will be this project and not maybe only, so to speak, bilateral to simplify things. My question is, can you tell us more as to how both your companies are today involved in pushing, I would say, a particular format for the deep space getaway?
So again, I'll repeat the question. What I understood from the question was how are our companies involved in shaping the architecture of the Deep Space Gateway? That's a fair summary. So I'll describe a couple of things. First of all, NASA has an ongoing process. They have something called a broad area announcement that Boeing and several others have a contract with NASA to do studies for what the architecture of the Deep Space Gateway ought to be, and then provide that data to NASA so that they can use that in their discussions with the international community about shaping the architecture of the Deep Space Gateway. Of course, we're also very interested in leveraging the relationships that we've developed on Space Station to help NASA, help the space agencies and the industry around the world figure out the best architecture that would work and the best way to integrate that and you know, kind of how that architecture ought to take place. So our role at Boeing mainly is to provide data, provide analysis to inform that process that really will be up to NASA working with the other space agencies around the world to ultimately define.
Ну, сегодня мы, наверное, обсуждаем вопрос о том, какая орбита должна быть выбрана. То есть это либо это орбита дальняя, либо это лунная полярная орбита. Сейчас мы проводим расчеты, смотрим, что более оптимально и для достижения поверхности Луны, и для дальнейшего исследования дальнего космоса.
Actually, what we're doing right now is calculating the better orbit for the cislunar gateway. We're calculating the better way to reach these orbits, and we're calculating the better way to reach the moon surface and the better way to go further to the deep space exploration.
Hi, I'm Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. The slide that you showed with the deep space capsule, is that based on a CST 100 or is that something new?
I'll repeat the question. I think tell me if I heard it right. She was asking about the slide that you have with a deep space capsule and asking if that was based on the CST 100 or was that something new?
Are you talking about this one?
Федерация — это абсолютно новый корабль, который сейчас разрабатывается в Энергии. Корабль предназначен для полетов и на низкую орбиту, будет его разновидность или более упрощенный вариант. И также этот корабль будет выполнять миссии для полетов в дальний космос. Для этого мы отрабатываем и новые технологии, и новые материалы. Ну и вот ищем и возможности совместного, тоже вот реализации совместных стыковочных узлов, для того, чтобы корабли и наши, американские, и других стран могли стыковаться на различных орбитах и решать, в общем, совместно различные вопросы.
This is an absolutely new crew vehicle, which is now being designed for different options for different systems. For example, for flying to the cislunar orbit or going further. And now we're designing the better way to make it, to design it. We're designing the docking systems so they will be common for American systems and ours, so they can work together. And it's a completely new vehicle.
John, am I allowed to ask a question? Здравствуйте, Vladimir. Очень рад вас видеть еще раз. My question is for Vladimir to start with, but John, I would like to hear your answer also. The agreed to end of the space station is 2024. We know it will last much longer than that. What do you think the future of the space station is as a multinational station, as a government-supported station, or eventually as a commercial endeavor for both countries or all countries involved?
Are you talking about the cislunar?
No, space station.
Space station.
МКС.
Ну, я думаю, что вот мы сегодня и с Боингом обсуждаем, ищем возможность коммерциализации станции, возможность максимально использовать на Земле то, что сегодня наработано в космосе, и что-то удается уже сейчас. Но я думаю, что в будущем, и мы это активно обсуждаем, значит, вот коммерциализация будет действительно иметь новое развитие. И мы имеем поддержку правительства, российского правительства. Я знаю, что в Америке приблизительно те же тренды, поэтому мы опять будем двигаться вместе, и надеюсь, что результаты будут очень хорошие.
We're trying to look the commercialization opportunities to commercialize the space station. But this is a collaboration of both commercial cooperation and government support. So we have the same rules that you have in the US. So it's kind of working together.
I'll add a few things, Frank. I think it's real important when we look at the transition of the International Space Station that we kind of look at some lessons learned from shuttle and don't repeat those, first of all. And so what I mean by that is we don't set an arbitrary date, retire the station before there is another low Earth orbit destination that can fill the requirements or the needs of space stations. So that would be the first thing, is to make sure we're kind of runway assured on another destination. I think the second thing is we need to, the current space station is a platform where we can develop markets in low Earth orbit. And those markets aren't quite there yet. I mean, we're doing a lot of good research, we have some promising ideas, but we can't fool ourselves into thinking that if we had another space station independent of the International Space Station, that it could be supported by funding other than from the governments, at least at the time being. And so I think that we need to go through a very thoughtful process and not just pick an arbitrary date and say we're done. We need to set some requirements, and when those conditions are met, then it will be time to move away from the space station onto something else. So those are my thoughts on that. Any further questions? No, one more. Then we'll
Yeah, it's better.
I'm Lena Devina with the Room Space Journal. We all know that relationship between Russia and America is not at its top yet, but luckily space industry, human space flight is not affected. Я потом по-русски перескажу. It's not largely affected. Are you afraid that there might be still some building up repercussions, and are we in danger of politics affecting a relationship in human space flight? Я спросил вас, Григорьевич, какие отношения между Россией и Америкой потенциально могут быть в области пилотируемой космонавтики. По счастью, санкции и вся эта взаимная нелюбовь, происходящая сейчас, пока что не коснулась программы МКС и всего, что с ней связано. Но боитесь ли вы, что есть такой риск? С русского на русский, да?
Ну, вы знаете, вот, к счастью, космос вне политики.
Luckily, this space exploration is out of politics.
И наоборот, вот наш опыт показывает, как надо жить без границ, без языковых проблем, без экономических проблем. Вот у нас на станции санкций нет. Надеюсь, и не будут.
So our cooperation experience shows everybody that there are no borders, no language barrier, no politics, nothing is between us for achieving one goal.
I would just add that I agree 100%. I think through this, it hasn't affected the daily operations of space station, for example. We continue to work very closely together. Yeah. And I think on the opposite, another way to look at that is how space has been a tool to pull countries together. Not just Russia and the US, but countries around the world. And that's one of the real benefits of continuing exploration. And so, that's what I would say about that. Okay, I think that wraps it up. Thank you all for your participation, for your questions.
Thank you very much for your question, for your participation. I hope we will have very good relationships in the coming future. Thank you very much.